How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
I'm changing the presenter controls to you.
All right. And can you all see my screen?
Yes, thanks, Shari.
All right. Let's get started because we have a lot of information to cover today. We're going to talk about keywords and copywriting. And for those of you who have not met me yet online, I am the founder and SEO director at Omni Marketing Interactive. I've been an SEO, a search engine optimizer, for over 20 years. And I went to library science school at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And I am still very much heavily involved in academia as well as I am in business. We are in part 2. This is about words and labels and copywriting. And these are the topics we're going to cover. First, we're going to do a quick SEO review to make sure we are all on the proverbial same page and we can understand the context of keywords. And then we're going to go over 2 extremely important SEO concepts. And it's not just SEO, it's actually findability concepts. Information sent and aboutness. Some of these terms are already familiar to you. We'll go over some keyword research tools and learn where we can locate and discover really good keywords that our target audiences use. We'll go over the 3 types of labeling systems and provide you with some tips for those. And I'll show you some other places where keyword placement is appropriate. Again, I'm going to show some good examples and some bad examples because we can learn a lot from them. I'm going to show you an older version of the Mayo Clinic website, and even though it's not a library website, what they have done is provide a particularly good labeling system. And it's for that reason I'm going to use that as an example, and then we'll compare it to some other library sites, and of course, as usual, if we have time, we'll have some questions and answers. So let's do what search engine optimization is. Remember, it's optimizing or making something as the best as it can be a website for people who use search engines. People first, search engine second. Google is not going to check out a book in your library, a human is. And so this is what we optimize for. People first and accommodate technology. Search engine optimization is a critical part of the user experience because users find things via a variety of methods online, browsing, searching, and asking. And this is what's called the user experience honeycomb that I follow. And here is the link for it. Please note that underscores, and we'll get to this, are not something I recommend putting in a URL, but there are underscores in this URL. But in the PDF document, if you click it, you should be able to go straight to it. We're going to talk about keywords and labels. Do your digital documents contain the words and queries that people type into search engines? Are these words featured prominently? Are they part of your labeling system? Do they appear frequently enough so that people understand aboutness? This is what we're going to focus on. But also understand that these 4 building blocks are not mutually exclusive. The idea is to have all 4 of these in place, and that will give you and your target audience the best searcher experience. Keywords and labels are what's considered on-the-page criteria because we as webmasters and as librarians have control over the words we place on web documents, the words we place into metadata. So this is why it's referred to as on-the-page criteria. So that was just the brief introduction. The main thing I wanted everyone to remember is to never forget that SEO is optimizing for people. People first, technology second. Okay, so here is a book called Information Foraging Theory. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending that everybody run out and get this book. If you're a very technical person, you will probably love this book. I love this book. I'm a technical person. And I have given you link to the PDF that's covered in what I'm about to talk about, and there's a link to Amazon. But information sent is about what Peter Paroli talks about. And what myself and my co-author did was that we simplified its meaning. And basically, information sent consists of textual and graphical cues that communicate where am I in the right place? If I'm not in the right place, where can I go and how can I get there? And information sent is incredibly important in any type of website, whether it's through searching or through browsing. And to make this concept more clear, what I like to use is an elevator. And here's an elevator panel that I redrew. And what happens when you press the number 7? Well, the number 7 is usually illuminated, or the circle around it is illuminated. The elevator moves up or down depending on what floor you're on. The elevator stops and you usually hear a ding. The elevator door opens and there's usually some kind of visual indicator to let you know that you are on the 7th floor. Maybe there's a sign. Maybe there's a number 7 on the side of the elevator door. Maybe the sign says rooms 710 to 750 if you're in a hotel. But the point is, you've got visual cues, audio cues, and graphical cues that tell you where you are and where you're going and that you've arrived. The same things happens when you press the letter L. Usually you go down, usually you hear the ding, the elevator's door opens, and if you're in a hotel, you might see the front desk or the concierge, and if you're in a library, you might see the entrance, you might see a place to check out books. Now, this next slide is an actual elevator that I saw in 2009. Which button, or what button would you push to go to the lobby? Now, the answer to this question will depend on which part of the earth you are in. If you are in Europe, people usually press the B button. And I was actually in Sweden sitting down in the lobby watching US Americans press the wrong button all the time, and I thought it was funny, but of course the US Americans didn't think it was funny. Most US Americans would pick G, but in reality, when I was in this elevator, this is where the letter G led us to. It didn't lead us to the ground floor, it led us to the garage. How much better would this elevator have been if there were some kind of word that said lobby? But this wasn't in this elevator, and this elevator has a very poor information sent because you don't know if you're going to arrive in the right place. And it's the same on search engines. Web searchers as well as site searchers follow an information sent. If people type in a keyword phrase, they expect to see these words appear in search listings, and depending on the type of searcher goals, you will see different words highlighted in search listings. And this seems to be a good search listing, so a user might click on it and they would land in this web page, and the information sent is clear, it's been validated, and this is a really good searcher experience. Well, it's the same on library sites. Remember Bolingbrook? I'm going to show this site again because they did some things really, really, really well. And one of them is indicate what the library hours are. Here is where the information sent originates. Google validates the information sent here and the information sent here. And there are multiple places that users can click on to get to the place they wish to go. So this is a good searcher experience. Site searchers also follow an information sent. Suppose a person is looking for The Tale of Genji or Genji Monogatari. It's the first novel ever written. And here we are on the Berkeley Library, and person typed in Tale of Genji. And there are a lot of different listings of The Tale of Genji, and these can be refined. So the information sent has been validated. Good searcher experience. but as most of us do, we might enter a typo. Voice search isn't as good as it could be, and there are a lot of tap mistakes made right now, so you might see this. So the information sent should not diminish or disappear. What this site did was correct the spelling. So the information sent is still there and the link looks clickable. So this is still a good searcher experience. And what I want you to remember about information sent is that information sent should remain the same or get stronger. If information sent remains the same or gets stronger, people tend to click. If information sent weakens, diminishes, or disappears, people are less likely to click. And people will actually click up to 25 times if the information sent gets stronger and stronger. That whole 3-click rule, that everything should be 3 clicks away from each other, is just nonsense. And it's been nonsense ever since it was first invented. So remember that. Information sent should not diminish or disappear. The other concept that's important for SEO is aboutness, and I will admit I learned about aboutness when I was in a library science graduate school. And here is a citation for it. And the aboutness I'm referring to is intentional aboutness, and that is what the author's intent is, or the librarian's intent. How are you describing the meaning of any type of document, whether it's a text-based document like a PDF or a web page, a graphic image, a video, or an audio file from the author's perspective? And if you have placed these words well in site navigation, in site content, in site metadata, then the aboutness of the document increases, and it's more likely that you're going to have accurate search results. So aboutness is extremely important when we're talking about information retrieval and search engine optimization. There are some more things for you to read if you're interested. The Hutchins article is particularly interesting. But the second quote, the process is generally seen to involve the selection of keywords or key phrases, which sums up the message of the document. And that's what search engine optimizers do. We look at keywords and we look at query words, and we will want to make sure that these are present on very specific parts of web pages. And that's what we're going to talk about. Keyword research and keyword discovery. So keyword is something that describes the content, and keywords help search engines match a document with an appropriate search query. Now, keywords and query words are often interchangeable, but query words tend to mean what a person types into a search engine. So the top one is from Google, the other two are from each a library website. Spirit Bear is the name of a book, and this is from somebody wanting to do research on Benjamin Franklin on a library website. But most of the time, query words and keywords tend to be synonyms. And the process of keyword research is locating and discovering words that your patrons use or anybody in your targeted audience uses to locate and discover your website. And it is an iterative process, or an ongoing process. It's something that, as an SEO, I've been doing pretty much every day but Saturday. Saturday is my offline day. It's something that I hope librarians do better at than they have done in the past, because it's really important to use the user's language. It's going to be very difficult for anything to rank appropriately if you're not using the user's language. So the first step in the keyword research process is actually brainstorming. In fact, I would take everything offline and generate ideas. What are people looking for? Don't put judgments on the words that you come up with. Don't put judgments on the ideas you put up with. The idea is quantity. What are people looking for? And one of the things I provided from you is this worksheet. It's called Printable Graphic Organizer. It's what I like to use, and notice it's used with old-fashioned pen and paper. You don't have to use this. There are other brainstorming templates available. And one of the things that we want to know is what questions do people ask at the reference desk? What questions do people ask when they call? What questions do people ask when they check out? And these words are so important because your customers and your patrons are speaking directly to you. So above all else, the words they speak directly to you are a huge, humongous priority. It's something that search engine optimizers tend to overlook because a lot of times people will say things or do things that they don't type into a search engine. And so it's important to look at all these resources. If you can, look at discussion forums, look at blogs, look at social media, and any place where library websites have user-generated content. What are the words people are using? Ignore the blog spam. What words are people using? And you're going to find that patrons' words are very, very different from librarians' words. And even though this isn't necessarily true about you as a librarian, a lot of people use jargon. I'm guilty of using jargon. And I have actually observed, participated in usability tests for library websites. And it's really, really interesting to observe a librarian take the usability test versus a patron taking the usability test, because their vocabularies and their mental models are very, very different. And these are things we want to uncover in the brainstorming process. I don't expect people to have the same mental models librarians have, because librarians have a very wonderful set of skills and aptitudes that the average person isn't necessarily exposed to. And based on the brainstorming lists and some of these online resources that I'm going to show you, you create a keyword list that you want to target. What are the words that you would like your website or any digital document to show up for? There are free and paid keyword research tools. There are search trends you can look for. In the last presentation, I showed you the Google tilde search, which shows you the synonym that Google uses. I like to use online thesauri and dictionaries, and I have some examples of that. Using web search analytics to confirm or see what people are using to locate and discover your own content. If you have a site search engine, search analytics software is very helpful. And also looking at your competitors, seeing what they're doing to make their content more findable. Now, we're not going to look at every single one of these. What I did for the presentation was just provide you with a list so that you could click on the links and go see things. Now, what I recommend that librarians do, unless you're already a school librarian or an academic library, is work with schools, work with organizations, work with parents, and help them help themselves. See what their homework projects are, see what their term papers are. Not asking you to do the work for them, but give them a good starting point, and you'll find that the more of these guides that you provide for your patrons, the more likely they are to use it. I'd rather see people consult a reference librarian before consulting Google. So here is a list of the main benefits of keyword research tools, but two of them are particularly important. Sometimes you don't think of keyword opportunities, and the data in these places will show you that. There are some data you can't get from your analytics data, And the more I can move librarians to understanding their user's language, the better it can be. And here are some things that you can use. These Google AdWords has a keyword planner, Bing has a keyword planner, Google Insights is very useful. There are search trends and there are related searches that I'll show you, and some of these I'm actually going to show you right now. Google Trends is very, very useful for discovering what's popular now, what's been popular in the past. One of the things, as an example, is I being an SEO, I'm often hired during election years to help people do well on searches for those particular years. And if you look at Declaration of Independence, which is what I typed in here, you'll see there's a big spike. And that big spike, of course, because we just had the 4th of July weekend. And this is hugely, hugely helpful, again, for things that we know occur every year. This is a keyword tool that I like to use, and I gave you that URL, the second one on the list. And this one is nice because it shows Autosuggest for Google, YouTube, Bing, Amazon, which is particularly useful for those of us who deal with books and other kinds of documents. What I'm referring to is these are Autosuggest tools, so like Jupiter, Juno appears, and this has to do with the space probe. YouTube, if we do a search for polar bears. I have a niece who loves polar bears. So these are the videos that people want to see when they're on YouTube, and this is very specific to YouTube. Amazon also has search suggests, so if we do polar bears, Polaroid, no, we like polar bears because they're cute. And then we just do the space, and then Autosuggest can fill in. So that's what this tool does, is it does this all in the same place for you so you don't have to jump around like I just did. This is another helpful website. They could use help with the interface, but you can see YouTube here, Bing here, and I can't even read that. There's Wikipedia, and there's Google, and there's Amazon, so this is another good tool. Ubersuggest is very easy to use for me as an advanced searcher, and as librarians as advanced searchers. You can sort things alphabetically, you can click things, and you can export this as a keyword list. And so I find this particularly helpful because things like Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology and Benjamin Franklin High School might not be applicable to where my library is located. Related searches, this top one is from Google, this bottom one is from Bing. What you want to see is if there is any overlap. So facts, F-A-C-T-S, Benjamin Franklin for kids, Benjamin Franklin facts for kids. That's a pretty good search set of keywords for a search engine query. And I like to compare these. The metaglossary, this is very useful for finding related terms. So here I used photosynthesis. Please keep in mind that this one is a UK search, so mineralization is spelled with an S on this one. I also like to look at Merriam-Webster Dictionary that has synonyms and antonyms, and other places that I know where I can get keyword ideas. If your digital document is a graphic image, I highly recommend that you go to stock photography websites. You might have to sign up for them. And what I like to do for that is sometimes I create an account that's general, like images.library.gov or images.library.edu, and that way you have an account that you know only goes to the person in charge of looking at graphic images. So if we look at polar bears and we look at a particular picture, we can see the keywords here on Adobe Stock. We look at iStock Photo, which is owned by Getty Images. You can see a bunch of different keywords. And here's Shutterstock. What's really handy too is to actually go into the search engines and look at image search, because these keywords are specific to graphic image search. Bing Images also has the same thing. And that is very, very useful. I find a lot of search engine optimizers overlook this great resource, or these great resources. What you're trying to ultimately do is find a set of keyword phrases that accurately describe your content. And we find that 50% of search queries are over 4 words. And when I usually optimize a digital document, I'm looking for 5 to 7 words that uniquely define that document. And I have included the link to this research in this PDF so you could see the full article. And what this 2050 study showed was that 27% of respondents phrased their query in the form of a question. And for those of you who are librarians, for people that include teenagers and younger people, they tend to write the form in the questions, and how being the most frequently used prefix. So that brings me to our poll question. Does your library website contain an FAQs, or frequently asked questions, Q&A section, or a support section?
Okay, I've launched the poll, so we'll give people a few seconds to respond. Everyone seems to be very quick with the clicks there, so we'll give it maybe 5 more seconds. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Ooh.
Yeah, so 40% of the respondents, they do have a frequently asked questions section, and 60% do not.
Well, I'm going to tell you something about questions. Questions, or the appearance of a question word in a search engine query, indicates that a user or a searcher has informational intent, meaning the person wants to know or learn more about a topic. So the naturally most occurring place that can occur is in an FAQ section, a support section, or a Q&A. It can also appear in a resources section. So let me get back on here. I would highly recommend that everybody have an FAQ section. And this is a really cool resource to help you understand the questions that people ask. And I'm going to actually go to that website because it is really, really cool. And I can't help it. This polar bear picture is just beyond cute. So I just clicked on it because it was cute. So this is the site from Answer the Public. You can see what, where, why, who, when, and which. And it's pretty, like a little lotus flower. But if you scroll down, you can click this and it turns into data. And then they do it alphabetically as well. So this is a really good resource for understanding what users search for. Another website I like to use is Quora. Now Quora does require a sign-in, but you can also take any of these questions and go into Google, because this is how I found this. I put Quora.com, why are polar bears white? And you can get the link. So, and what happens is you see related questions and related questions. Not all of them are related, but it gives you a good idea of what people are looking for. And what's really nice about Quora is if you are a librarian, or if you're, in this case, a neuroscientist. I happen to be, my background's in genetics, and I've worked in labs for 10 years, so Google's Doodle today is particularly neat, but you can actually answer these questions, and you can even link back to your library website if you have resources about this. So absolutely, I would tell you to have these items, FAQs, on your website. And I've provided you also, so here is the screenshot of it, but I highly recommend two things. One of them is an article, and that's free. That shows FAQs delivering great value. And the second one, it's only $29, and I bought this a while ago. And this is one of the best reports I have ever read about having and maintaining frequently asked questions. I don't get paid for any of this. I just know that this was one of the best things I've ever read, and if it's in your budget, the $29, I highly recommend that you get this, because a lot of websites do not format Q&As very well. Another tool that I like to use is something called TagCrowd, and this is for people who are more visually oriented. You can type in a web page URL. It could be your site, it could be your competitor's website, or you can upload a file, and a tag cloud is generated. And based on this tag cloud, you can see what that particular web page is emphasizing and what it is not emphasizing. And this can be a lot of fun, and you can watch websites evolve over time. There is also software that is more technically oriented, and this is something called Screaming Frog. And I have no idea why they call it Screaming Frog, but that's what it is. And you can look at not only your own website, but you can also look at competitors. So for example, you might want to see, you know, here are their URLs. Where are URLs where they use underscores? Where are URLs that they mix uppercase and lowercase? None. That's really good. Where are URLs that are extremely long? Not surprisingly, blogs and news. You can look at page titles. Are there any pages that are missing page titles? That's a bad thing. Are there pages that are duplicate? That's also not a good thing. And you can also look at page titles that are probably too long. We usually recommend 89 or less. If you can do 40 to 60, 40 to 69 characters, that's better, but these are probably too long. You can see if the meta descriptions are missing, they're duplicated, which is all but not a good thing, and ones that are too long. And you can also look at images to see if their file size is too large or if the image doesn't have alternative text. This is the least expensive of the SEO tools out there, and we use this for competitive analysis as well as analyzing our own websites. Other good sources of data are web search analytics and site search analytics. This is a book I highly recommend, and I might be able to get you all a discount to Rosenfeld Media. So if you hold off on getting this book, I'll see what I can do. It actually uses a university website as an example in the book. So for those of you who have university websites, I highly recommend this book. They also recommend it in general. It shows you what items to focus on in a site search. The web analytics data we look at Google Analytics. We also look at webmaster tools. You might hear the term Google Webmaster Tools, Bing Webmaster Tools. Google calls it Google Search Console. Most of us still call it Google Webmaster Tools. These tell you what people actually do on your website, how they actually interact. And you can compare what people actually do on your website versus what you see on the web or in other places. And one of the things to be aware of, though, is when we're dealing with a web search, not a catalog search, but a web search, a lot of times people will search for something if the labeling system is not clear. So that's something to be on the lookout for. So that leads us to our next poll question. And it's a two-parter, so I'm handing it over to Louise.
Yep, I'm going to launch the poll now. So it's a question about what kind of keyword research tools that you use, whether it's free or online, if you have website analytics, site search analytics, or if it's none of the above, that's fine. I'll give folks a few more seconds to vote. About 70% have voted so far. Give it a couple more seconds. All right, great. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and show you all the results. All right, so it looks like 5% of you use free online keyword research tools. Nobody uses paid online research tools. And 58% use web or website analytics. 5% use site search analytics, and 32% say none of the above. And I only had one answer to choose from, not multiple. I suppose some folks could use more than one. But did those results come through, Shari?
Yes, they did. And
Okay.
One of the things I like to compare as a search engine optimizer for the web is comparing how my site does on web search and do the same pages do well in site search. And my research for the past 20 years show that there is a very strong correlation. So I thought that was really interesting to know. Well, this is the same question. Here are other tools that we talked about: answering your patrons' questions and applying those to the website. Do you use online reference resources, Q&A resources, and do you do any type of competitor analysis?
All right, I'm launching that poll now. We'll give everyone a few seconds to vote. We're at about 50%, so I'll give it a few more seconds. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close. Thank you, everybody, for selecting your choices, and I'll show you the results. So 65% say answering patrons' questions and applying those to their websites. 6% use online reference resources like thesauri and dictionaries. 0% chose Q&A resources or competitor analysis, and 29% said none of the above.
That one wasn't surprising. I would expect that librarians would absolutely put their frequently asked questions or their patrons' questions on their website. Thank you, all of you, for completing those polls. Okay, so I just gave you a bunch of keyword resources, and I have to go to this next slide because I have many different graphic images that I can use and different words that people say to me after I show them all of these resources. And basically they all say the same thing as, "Are you insane, Shari? Are you kidding me?" And the truth is that I'm not. Once we really understand our target audience, and there's different target audiences for those of you in particular who work in public libraries. Once you understand their language, you can start writing things and labeling things in the user's language that does not interfere with how you as a librarian communicate. You can still use librarian jargon just as long as you still explain things in a way that your target audience understands. So, do I use all of these keyword research tools? Absolutely, but I am also an SEO. Do I expect everybody to use all of these keyword research tools? No, I would expect you to use the ones that give you the most value. But in the beginning, when you're doing SEO, you cast a wide net, and over time, you become better and better and better at it, and you find the tools that are the best for you, the tools that are best for your target audience, and also keyword research becomes a habit. Remember, it is an ongoing process because keywords change as the web changes. Documents are added, documents are deleted, documents are archived, documents are updated, and it's up to us as information professionals to label things properly and make these items easier to find. Since I know that, part 3, we're going to be talking about navigation and accessibility, I don't do keyword research projects one at a time. I know I have to contextualize everything on a website, so I want related items, related topics to link to each other, as you would see in a bibliography. I would absolutely encourage you to focus on keyword phrases that resonate most with your patrons. Again, working with individual groups, organizations, and schools can really help you with this. And then based on this information, you can create a keyword calendar. And this is particularly useful for events. If you know you're going to create some kind of content, whether it's an article, an event, a graphic image, or a video, what are the words you want to use to describe and label that video? When are you going to publish it? And how are you going to promote it? Are you going to promote it offline? And how are you going to promote it online, such as via social media? Again, once this whole thing becomes a habit, it's not as daunting. But if you've never done SEO or you've done it very little, this can seem intimidating, and that's where I get the expression of, are you kidding me? Have you lost your mind, Shari? But I started from the beginning too, and over time I get, like a reference librarian, I get a wide variety of people asking for different things, and that's how I learn. And it's good for me, it's good for the target audience, it's good for everybody. So that was labeling system. That was keywords. Now we're going to take these keywords and incorporate them into content and a labeling system. And a labeling system on a website consists of 3 things: document labels, content labels, and navigation labels. Document labels consist of page titles, the actual file name, if it's an HTML document, a graphic image, or a video, and also what the overall web address is. So let's look at Mayo Clinic. Okay, this is the title tag, and what's really good about this title tag is the word flu. Notice that they didn't put just influenza. That's a word that a health professional might use. The average person is going to use the word flu. And just so you know, web search engines ignore punctuation, so the hyphen and the parentheses are completely ignored. Now the file name DS0081 means absolutely nothing to users, but the very first part of it, and remember we talked about front loading in part 1, clearly indicates that this is a page about the flu. Now titles appear in search listings, and they tend to be the call to action in a search results page. And the titles are so important because they are that hyperlink, and if you don't spend enough time on your titles, making them unique, making them meaningful to users, Google is going to rewrite them. Not all search engines will rewrite them, but Google definitely does. So spend the extra time on that. Here are some general guidelines for title tags. And the next type of label is a file name or a URL. Now, the Fountaindale Public Library did a really, really good job with their URL structure. So that's one of the reasons that I picked this out. And for a person who wants to go directly to a web page where they use a search engine to navigate to a specific place on a website, this is so important, the URL structure, and this was done extremely well on this site. One of the things I did give as a handout is the accessible URL checklist to help make sure that your URLs are as search engine friendly as possible. Content labels are headings, subheadings, content taglines or subject taglines, and if you're using a graphic image or a video or a thumbnail of anything, captions are also considered labels. So if we go back to Mayo Clinic, we see in H1, headlines in HTML are considered H1, H2, H3, H4. This is in H1, this is in H2. But it's more than just HTML code. These are the things that people look at when they arrive on a web page. That heading, particularly the H1, the first one on the page, carries a lot of weight. It's not just because of the HTML code, it's because A, users look at it, and B, it tends to be the largest text on the page. It tends to have some white space around it. So people will look at it and people will interpret it. So here, this would be in H1 and this would be in H2. So here are some general rules for page headings. The page heading and the titles should not be exact matches. They should be very, very similar, but they should not be exact. And if you're going to use headlines on your page, remember only one H1 formatted heading per page. It should have unique content, no duplication or make it minimal, and H1 formatted headings should appear at the top of the page. If you use Screaming Frog, it can tell you if you have missing H1s. It can tell you if you have duplicate H1s. There are a number of other tools available. If you want to know those tools, just email me and ask me. The page headings are huge. For those of you who ordered eye tracking web usability, there's some really good data in that book about page headings. The hierarchy should be clear in HTML. You shouldn't have an H1, an H4 appearing before an H1 if at all possible. And here's an example from a publication, one of the publications I do. I didn't see this on a library site with a content tagline. And this is what my editors require me to do. H1 formatted headline, a content tagline. We are required to do a hero image. We have to put alternative text in it, and an intro paragraph. What's really great is if you have at least a headline and an intro paragraph, because if you have those two things, usually it's very clear to a search engine what this document is about. In fact, if you don't have time to do a meta tag description, a colleague of mine, Danny Sullivan, says just take the first two sentences in your intro paragraph and copy it in your meta tag description. It's a lot easier to do that than to come up with something unique every time. So navigation labels. Navigation labels we're going to go into more detail in part 3. But number one thing to know is they must support user goals and tasks. And that's why the user's language is so important in using a website's navigation system. So here's an example from Mayo Clinic. And Mayo Clinic, this is an older version of their website. They didn't quite get everything right. A lot of people didn't know this was navigation, and part of the reason is it's in what's called the banner blindness area, and the other reason is that gray is not a good color to use in navigation. There is an exception, and I'm going to call out this library site because I was so happy to see it. You can see that health information has an underline in it, meaning it's highlighted. We are in the diseases and conditions section. This should be highlighted. We're in the basics section, it is highlighted, and we're in the definition, and it is highlighted. And we can tell where we are based on these location-based breadcrumb links. So Gail Borden Library, Collections is highlighted. I apologize, that's red, and they're using an orange background. And this is highlighted as well. So they've done a good job at highlighting. Some things that might be confusing to users is FreeGal, Hoopla, Roku. Maybe if you're from Elgin, this makes sense, but a lot of people who aren't from the Elgin area have no idea what these things mean. This is a site I wanted to call out. This is for my girl from the Berwyn Public Library. Yay! This is an extremely well done navigation label. These might not be able to be highlighted based on the content management system, but it is very clear that your target audience is grouped, kids, teens, and adults. Then things such as event services, e-library, and catalog are also grouped together. I was actually part of a usability test for a public library where they used the word youths, Y-O-U-T-H-S, and I was actually a participant. So the interface was being tested, and I said what I would do is I would pick up the phone, call the reference desk, and ask a question. And the people doing the test said, no, 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 you have to click on one of the links. And I said, no, 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 you're trying to figure out what a person would actually do. I don't know what you mean by the word youth. So I would pick up the phone and call the reference desk. We might also add that I think reference librarians are the coolest people in the world. But the test overall, because we got to see the results of the test, showed that kids, teens, and adults was by far the best label for differentiating the audiences at a public library. So yay to Berwyn Public Library. Now there are other places we can put keywords, and there's only a couple, of course, in metadata when we're dealing with the web. When in doubt, use Dublin Core. But there are two meta tags that are particularly important, and they're called the description and the keyword tag. Now they really don't have an effect on ranking in a web search engine, but they do have other important qualities, which is why I think everybody should pay attention to them. A lot of times the description or the snippet that displays in Google, Yahoo, and Bing is the meta tag description. And if you don't write a good meta tag description, Google will generate something on its own, which is one of the reasons I often will take the first two sentences of an intro paragraph and modify it for the meta tag description. That way my web listing is displaying the way I want it to show. It doesn't always work, but it does work most of the time. Most SEOs will discount meta tag keywords because they don't believe it's a ranking factor. That very well may be true for web search engines, but it's not true for site search engines. So if you do have a site search engine, spend time writing a good meta tag keyword list. And these are things that are true for text-based documents. If you were doing meta tag optimization for videos, that would make or break a search engine ranking in YouTube. The metadata is absolutely used to determine relevancy. And finally, alternative text. In the event that a graphic image does not load on a browser, alternative text often appears in its place, and it's usually a text equivalent of that image. And alternative text is a ranking factor for image search. So for those of you that have collections of photos and other types of images, alternative text is extremely important. And it's also important for screen readers. Now, I didn't mean to pick on you guys. I just wanted to show you an example of what happens sometimes when you're so into a website, things can get overlooked. This is the special needs page on the Fountaindale Public Library, and this graphic image does not have any alternative text. And this is the one page I would tell you to have alternative text on, is the special needs. So I thought it was cute, and that is the only reason I wanted to show this to you. And it shows up like this, alt. So what did I want you to know? Do your keyword research, use the user's language. You're going to take those keywords and you're going to place them in a number of places on your web page. I'm not saying you have to place them everywhere, but I am telling you to place them in enough places where both a search engine and a human being, your target audience, can tell what your content is about. Have a clear and consistent labeling system. If you don't have a clear and consistent labeling system now, you can always have one in the future. Your most important words should be prominent on your pages. Aboutness should be clear immediately when the page loads. And use keywords frequently enough so your pages appear focused, but don't overdo it. Don't keyword stuff. What I like to do is something called the 5-second usability test, and it's actually a very fun test to do. What you do is you show a person a web page for 5 seconds. I tend to do 8 seconds, take it away, and then ask them to write, say, or text everything that they remember about that page. And if they don't remember your most important keyword phrases, then the aboutness is compromised. So we have some time for questions, and for those of you who think I'm an evil SEO, I actually love this article, and I can send it out to you. Again, I am a firm believer that librarians are the best hope we have for the web, and it is my life's goal to help librarians achieve that goal. So thank you, and do we have time for questions?
Sure, thank you, Shari. Kudos to you for getting through all that content in our time allowed. That's awesome. So I do have a comment, and I have 2 questions that came in. I guess we have a staff member from Berwyn in the audience today, and she said, cool, I'm here because I'm certain we can do better, but yay. So she appreciates your compliments. And the next question I have is, our library has frequently asked question sections for different topics, such as an ebook frequently asked questions or a genealogy frequently asked questions. Is it more beneficial for users to have the frequently asked questions in one location?
It's better to have it in context. So the way you're doing it is fine. But if you have a knowledge database, so the larger your site gets, the more your site needs wayfinders. Sometimes I will create an FAQ or a Q&A wayfinder, and that just is an additional way for people to be able to find information. I usually tend to do wayfinders for different file types, but an FAQ wayfinder is realistic. But I wouldn't do one unless your site's FAQs got quite large. Then I would definitely create one. So the way you're doing it is fine.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question is kind of a fun curiosity type question. Going back to your elevator example,
Yep.
which button do you push to go to the lobby?
Oh, this is really funny. Do you know where this elevator was? It was, my niece was born on this day, and this was the elevator in our hospital. And my niece's name is Metallica. We call her Tally. And she was the New Year's baby. You're not going to believe what the correct number is. It's actually 5.
5, not a letter.
It wasn't a letter. And I actually collect pictures of elevators that have bad information sent in different languages. And just so you know, Japan so far is in the lead for best information sent elevators. But yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've come to the end of our time. That's all the questions I had for today. So thank you so much, Shari. I appreciate it. We did record today, so I will be posting that on the Real CE Archives page as soon as possible, and I'll send everyone an alert when it's ready. And then we'll see you all again next week for part 3. That'll be next Thursday, the 14th at 1:30. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again, Shari.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.